The transmission reached every corner of the Vexry Empire within minutes. Admiral Korthax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his purple scales gleaming under the artificial lights as he raised his clawed fist toward the massive view screen. Behind him, 200 warships held formation, their weapons still warm from the battle that had just concluded. "Citizens of the Empire," Korthax announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute confidence, "today marks the end of the human threat. Their pathetic fleet lies scattered across the void. Their homeworld burns. Their species is finished. Across 1,000 worlds, the Vexry celebrated. They drank fermented nectar in the capital cities. They danced in the streets of their colonies. They praised the name of Admiral Korthax, the hero who had finally crushed the troublesome mammals from the small blue planet called Earth. The war had lasted only 3 standard cycles. The humans had appeared suddenly in the galactic community, their primitive vessels barely capable of reaching faster than light speeds. The Vexry had demanded immediate surrender. The humans had refused. It was a mistake that Korthax believed he had corrected permanently. Commander Lyris, the admiral's second-in-command, approached him with a data tablet clutched in her claws. Her expression carried something that Korthax did not immediately recognize. It looked almost like concern. "Admiral, our scouts have completed their assessment of the human home system," she said quietly. Korthax barely glanced at her. He was still enjoying the cheers echoing through the communication channels from the celebrating masses back home. "And? I assume nothing survived our bombardment." Lyris hesitated. That hesitation should have been the first warning. "The planetary bombardment was successful, Admiral. Their major cities are destroyed. Their governments have collapsed. But what?" Korthax finally turned to face her, annoyed at having his moment of triumph interrupted. "We have confirmed casualties of approximately 4 billion humans." Korthax clicked his teeth together in amusement. 4 billion. That is most of their population, is it not? The remaining few will scatter and die. Their species is broken. Admiral. Lyris lowered her voice even further. 4 billion represents approximately half of their population. The celebration on the bridge continued around them, but Korthax felt something cold settle in his chest. 8 billion. The humans had maintained a population of 8 billion on a single planet. The Vexry homeworld, 3 times the size, supported only 2 billion at its peak. "That is impossible," he said flatly. "I have confirmed the data multiple times, Admiral. Additionally," Lyris paused again, clearly not wanting to continue. "Speak." "Their colonies in the outer regions of their system were not targeted in our assault. We focused on their primary planet as planned. However, those colonies contain additional population centers, mining operations, manufacturing facilities, and..." She stopped. Korthax grabbed the data tablet from her claws. What he saw made his blood run cold. The humans had been preparing. While the Vexry celebrated their easy victory, while Korthax had been giving speeches and accepting praise, the surviving humans had not been dying quietly. They had been building. The outer system facilities had gone dark after the initial attack. Vexry intelligence had assumed this meant surrender or death. They had been wrong. The facilities had gone dark because the humans had activated protocols that hid them from detection, protocols that gave them time. "How long has it been since our attack?" Korthax asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 14 cycles, Admiral. 14 cycles. In 14 cycles, the Vexry had celebrated, given speeches, organized victory parades, and distributed honors to every officer who had participated in the assault. In 14 cycles, they had declared the war over and begun withdrawing the fleet to peacetime positions. In 14 cycles, the humans had built a fleet 3 times the size of what they had possessed before. Korthax stared at the numbers in disbelief. It was not possible. No species could construct vessels at that rate. No population could recover from the loss of half its people and immediately turned to military production. It violated every principle of galactic warfare that the Vexery had developed over 10,000 years of conquest. But the humans had not read Vexery principles. They did not care about the proper way to conduct warfare or recover from defeat. They cared about one thing only: survival. The first attack came without warning. A flash of light erupted at the edge of the system, and suddenly there were ships everywhere. Human ships. Ugly, blocky vessels covered in weapons that the Vexery sensors could barely identify. They moved faster than they should have been capable of moving. They fired weapons that cut through Vexery shields like they were made of nothing. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as the first salvo struck home. All ships, defensive formation. Korthax screamed into the communication system. Engage the enemy immediately. But his orders came too late. The scattered Vexery fleet, spread across multiple systems in their victory celebration, could not coordinate. Ships that tried to regroup were destroyed before they could complete their maneuvers. Ships that tried to flee were run down by human vessels that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. On the view screen, Korthax watched his mighty armada die. A human transmission cut through the chaos of the battle. It was audio only, a single voice speaking in that strange musical language that the Vexery had learned to translate during the brief war. Admiral Korthax. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Navy vessel Resurrection. I wanted you to understand something before you die. Korthax could not respond. The bridge was filling with smoke, and his crew was scrambling to contain multiple fires that had erupted across the ship's systems. You destroyed our cities. You killed 4 billion of our people, our parents, our children, our friends. You thought this would break us. The voice paused, and when it continued, it carried something that Korthax recognized all too well. It was the same tone he himself had used when declaring victory. You made an error. Every empire we have ever known made the same error. They thought that hurting us would make us surrender. They thought that killing enough of us would make us give up. They thought that destruction would lead to our defeat. Another explosion rocked the Eternal Dominion. Korthax fell to the deck, his scales cracking against the metal floor. But humans do not break, Admiral. We do not surrender when we are hurt. We get angry. And when we get angry, we become very, very creative about finding ways to hurt you back. The view screen flickered, and suddenly Korthax could see the human fleet in its entirety. Thousands of vessels. Tens of thousands. More ships than the entire Vexery Navy had ever commanded. Ships built in 14 cycles by a population that should have been dying. You celebrated our defeat, Captain Vasquez continued. You threw parades while our children died. You gave speeches while our homes burned. And in that time, while you were celebrating, we were working. Every survivor. Every person who lost someone they loved. They built ships. They trained soldiers. They created weapons that your empire has never imagined. Korthax finally found his voice. You cannot win. Even if you destroy this fleet, the empire will crush you. We have 1,000 worlds. We have resources beyond your comprehension. The human captain laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was the sound of someone explaining something obvious to a child who refused to understand. Admiral, we already took 40 of your worlds while you were giving speeches. Your outer colonies fell in the first 3 cycles after your attack. Your mining operations in the Kethran sector were captured 4 cycles ago. The factories you used to build your weapons now build ours. Korthax felt the blood drain from his face. That was impossible. There had been no reports. No warnings. Your communication networks are very efficient, Vasquez explained, as if reading his thoughts. They were also very easy to compromise. Every message your commanders sent has been intercepted for the past 10 cycles. Every order you gave went exactly where we wanted it to go. The Eternal Dominion listed heavily to one side as more systems failed. Through the damaged view screen, Korthax could see escape pods launching from the few remaining Vexery ships. Human vessels moved to intercept them, not to destroy them, but to capture them. Why? Korthax asked, the single word carrying all the confusion and horror that he felt. Because dead prisoners cannot tell us what we need to know. Your officers will provide information about your remaining defenses. Your soldiers will describe your military structures. And your admiral, there was a long pause. Your admiral will stand trial for the murder of 4 billion civilians. Korthax thought about reaching for his personal weapon. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to die fighting rather than face the humiliation of capture. But his claws would not move. His body had finally understood what his mind refused to accept. The humans had not just survived. They had prepared for this exact moment. Every decision the Vexery had made, every celebration they had held, every speech they had given, had been anticipated and used against them. One final thing, Admiral. Captain Vasquez's voice had lost its hard edge. It almost sounded gentle. Your people asked why humans are so difficult to defeat. Your scientists studied our biology. Your psychologists examined our behavior. They never found the answer. The bridge doors exploded inward, and human soldiers in heavy armor poured through the gap. They moved with mechanical precision, securing the surviving crew with restraints that locked around wrists and ankles. The answer is simple, Vasquez continued as 2 soldiers approached Korthax and pulled him to his feet. Every other species in this galaxy evolved to survive their environment. They learned cooperation. They learned peace. They developed in ways that made sense for their worlds. Korthax was dragged toward the damaged bridge doors, his claws scraping uselessly against the metal floor. Humans evolved on Earth, and Earth is one of the most hostile worlds in the galaxy. Every generation of our species had to fight to survive, against predators, against disease, against each other. We are not a peaceful species that learned violence. We are a violent species that learned peace. And you made the mistake of reminding us what we really are. The last thing Admiral Korthax saw before being forced into a transport vessel was the sight of the Eternal Dominion breaking apart. His flagship. His pride. The symbol of Vexery dominance. Across the void, the human fleet spread outward toward the remaining Vexery systems. They did not move like conquerors seeking territory. They moved like a force of nature that could not be stopped or reasoned with. The Vexery Empire had celebrated the defeat of humanity. They had made speeches and organized parades and declared themselves victorious. They had made the same error that every enemy of humanity had made throughout history. They had confused the moment of greatest danger for the moment of victory. They had struck at a species that responded to destruction not with surrender, but with determination. They had awakened something that should have been left asleep. And now, as human ships entered Vexery space faster than any defense could respond, the Empire finally understood the truth. The humans had never been defeated. They had simply been given a reason to stop being peaceful. The celebrations ended. The silence that replaced them was filled with fear.